Namaste. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about a very important subject for spiritual seekers tonight. And literally, this is not only about the spiritual seekers, but only if you are a seeker and you want to become free, then it benefits you. But it's something that everyone should do. And that is the cessation of personal identity, aka ego. And this is the fundamental core of many, if not all, spiritual traditions and religions. Only different systems have explained it in different ways. So, for example, if we want to put it in a universal way, let's say that in the universe itself is only one intelligence, consciousness, soul, whatever you like to call it. But in order for the duality and creation to exist, the individual identity must happen so you can feel that you're someone separate from everyone else. And why this happens, it's not the subject for this discussion. But here's the point. Until you are someone, you suffer. And this someone is something in your head in a way. When you remove that someone, nothing can bother you. You don't get attached to anything. You don't, go after pleasures. You also don't, you know, react to things because literally there's not going to be any person there to react, to seek, to worry, to have any problem, to have fears. And you might ask me, okay, what do you mean there's not going to be a person? Am I going to die? Not really. It's like the thing that you think you are, it's not really real. It's like illusion. It's a thought. And the work of spirituality, the real authentic spirituality, not some new age crap, is the annihilation of ego. And if you study some of the most authentic and ancient traditions, which the biggest one of all of them is the Hindu systems and its subcategories like Buddhism as well as Sufism, they all talk about this. You might think Sufism comes, for example, from Islam and it's related to Islam and something like that. And then Buddhism doesn't even believe in God. But if you really develop an intelligence perception to understand these systems, you'll see that they exactly talk about the same thing. Sufism talks about becoming nothing. Buddhism also talks about the same thing. In Buddhism, the highest achievement is nothingness. And this nothingness, it doesn't mean what you probably think, something that like, oh, you're gonna die, or like anything like that, that you might think. But it's the understanding that the highest state to be in is a state of emptiness. And that emptiness means realizing that actually you're already empty. And in Buddhism, they say all phenomena are empty of a stable, permanent nature. So there's nothing in anything that doesn't change. In some other traditions of like Hindu systems, for example, like Vedanta, They might put it like this and say that everything changed, only Brahman or, the cosmic soul, God, cosmic consciousness doesn't change. And then if you study them deeply, you'll see that actually they are talking about the same thing. Only, in my opinion, when Buddha taught, he was trying to avoid giving people a teaching that also can become an obstacle. Because sometimes if you say there's a cosmic soul of God or something like that, then in your inner journey, that also becomes an attachment or, imagination, which prevents you from seeing the truth. Because when we say emptiness, here's the thing. Emptiness means that the real highest truth can only be experienced when you're completely empty of any idea, belief, thought, imagination, and it's absolute silence. So the great Sufi, I think it was Bayezid Bastami, it's been said that he did many, many years of austerities, and then he meets God in his meditation, in his inner journey ascension. And then God asks him, okay, Bayezid, what do you want? Whatever you want, I give it to you. He says, I only want you. Then God said, but as long as you exist, it's not possible. After some time, maybe years later, he again reaches to that state of, realization, inner journey. And then God asks him, what do you want? He says, like, I only want you, God, and all that. Then God says, as long as you exist, it's not possible. So you might think, okay, what do you mean? Like, did he go and kill himself or something like that? No. So what happened? For a third time, I think he got into that state. And then they say God asked him, which is also a symbolic statement, in my opinion, because God is your own consciousness. So when you get to that experience, that state, it's just like your mind translating that experience for you in a way to say, okay, God asked you or something like that. Anyways, so he goes to that state again. And then God asks him, what do you want? And he remains silent. And in that silence, the person, the identity that was believed to be Bayezid didn't exist. So he realized and became one with the highest truth. So if you see Sufism, Vedanta, Buddhism, all of them talk about the same reality. So why I'm talking about this? Look, as long as you trying to be someone, that someone that you become is temporary, because when you're someone or something, that thing never stays the same. It keeps changing. Look at it. Your body keeps changing since you were born, and your thoughts and, habits, emotions, or all those things keep changing. One day you feel great, one day you feel horrible, and all those kind of stuff. But if you reduce that sense of I, which is the main teaching of some systems like Sufism, reducing the ego and removing it. In Sufism, they call that a state of realization, they don't call it nirvana like Buddhism, they call it fana, which means to be, to die in God. They ask Buddha, what is nirvana? What happens when you achieve nirvana, which is the ultimate realization, ultimate freedom? the meaning of the word nirvana is kind of like to be blown away. It's like a candle. When you blow a candle, where does the flame go? It just disappears. So the thought of identity is also like that. When you do inner work and that sense of I, that hallucination, that illusion of personhood I is removed, then what remains, which is not explainable, is your real nature. So is it an easy thing to achieve to that state of enlightenment, ultimate freedom? Whether it's not or it is, that's not the subject here. But whether you can move towards it is what I want to discuss. So when you try to reduce your significance, when you try to practice not being defensive, not seeking validation, not trying to be superior, removing your attachments, all these, spiritual and religious practices, you are actually doing yourself the greatest service, because the less sense of significance you have, the less you can be offended, the less attachments you will have, and the less you will be bothered about everything. You will become more free, The highest desire built in, we can say in a way, in the soul of every human being is freedom. If you look clearly, nobody is going to choose anything beyond freedom, because freedom is the highest state, and it's even beyond any pleasure, any experience, because even the experiences and the pleasures of life are temporary and entangling and cause suffering, because you get attached to it and you lose it and you suffer and all that. And that's why in the Sufism, I think it's Hafiz, the great Sufi poet, who says, what is the difference between sadness and happiness for a Sufi? Just bring the wine. What is this wine? This wine doesn't mean an external, like a liquid that you put in your body at all. Bring the wine means bring that wisdom, the light, awareness, and see that when you are satisfied from within, when you generate your bliss from within, you don't even care. You don't seek happiness outside of yourself. They say in Buddhism, Buddha is always in hell. Is it because he was a bad boy? No, it's because he always works to liberate other beings, and he cannot suffer anymore. Even hell cannot cause suffering to you when you are free from a sense of I. Any religion or spiritual tradition that doesn't teach reduction of ego and removing this sense of personhood is not in alignment with the highest truth. So there's a lot of therapeutic value in this also, when you even meditate using different techniques from different traditions, and you try to contemplate and transcend that sense of I, ego, even for a second. There's a lot of therapeutic value, because in that state, We can even explain this in many ways in terms of, whatever happens in terms of neuroscience and psychology and those kind of stuff. I can give you hundreds of, you know, even scientific reasons later if we need to. But when you go beyond that state of being engaged all the way, it's like all the way you're pushing the brake. It's like all the time you're struggling. Like, okay, why did this happen? What's gonna happen? What do I do now? Okay, what do I do next? And all the time having a sort of mental diarrhea. What's happening? What's happening? What do I do? And when you kind of stop that, even for a second, a great healing happens within you. A great change in the brain happens, in the neuroplasticity. And the neuroplasticity really means that you start expanding your world and universe within yourself and get out of a limited way of being and thinking, just going from one route to another route and like that and like that. Why not just go everywhere? Because universe is limitless. So that's also a great practice for learning to be a genius, an independent thinker, outside the box thinker. Like all the out of box thinkers, they had some of this neuroplasticity. It's only the people who are stuck so much attached to what they know and their beliefs, and oh, the science says it's like this, or this cannot happen. And there's been thousands of such, events in the history that people were even killed because they said, okay, this is possible. And then the mainstream science, the collective consciousness, the majority said, like, this is stupid. The science says this, like, this doesn't look right. Whether it was a, scientific thing, discovery, or it was a spiritual declaration or things like that. People who do genius things, invent things, or, make discoveries, and spiritual people or people who are, go against the majority, and they state new ideas, things that change the world. Those people can see the world and think in different ways. And this neuroplasticity and expanding the ways that you can perceive the world can happen very powerfully by doing many different types of meditation practices. But one of the most powerful, I think the most powerful way, is to become absolutely present and silence, which is very difficult to do it by force. Actually, it's not possible. But if you use the right yogic techniques, for example, even for a second a day, to get into that state, you touch what's called the quantum field, also the field of all possibilities. That is the field of cosmic consciousness, the field of pure being, where everything comes from there. That's also that nothingness, which is actually the source of everything, because everything has to come out of something, right? But cannot be just a thing, because if it's a thing, then that thing also must be created by another thing. That's also the argument, about God also. They say, okay, if there is a God, then who created the God? So that's not possible. So the highest truth of universe, according to many religions, they explained it in different ways, some of them very obvious way, and some of them in a symbolic way, which is very misunderstood for some people. But the highest truth of universe is that everything comes from that nothingness. But that nothingness, we don't understand it and we cannot understand it. That is something that can be only realized within by evolution of your consciousness, to realize that behind everything, this vast universe, it's so vast that if you try to think too much about it, your brain is going to crash. So these billions and billions of like different type of creatures only on Earth and galaxies and everything, ever expanding universe, whether it was like a big bang and where did that big bang came from and all those things, it's coming out of a place, a state, which we can say also nothingness. And this nothingness is also what we call God. And this is a huge misunderstanding for mainstream religious followers that think that God is some entity sitting somewhere controlling your life and something like that. And there is a place for deities or manifestations of God as a person. And that's true because God is everything. God can be everything. God can talk to you through a flower. Let's not use the word God. Let's say universe. Universe can manifest and communicate through anything. A tree, a flower, a person, a divine being, angel, avatar, whatever. So is the universe the field, the field of all possibilities and the universal intelligence that manifests itself through countless means and communicates to you with innumerable different ways. And when you stop thinking too much and you become more perceptive, you just become more present. You practice mindfulness, becoming aware of what is happening in your body, in your feelings, in your breath, every moment, becoming aware of your environment, not to think about everything and label them. You see, Maya or the cosmic illusion, or what different religions call like New Age concept of matrix, and that's something that keeps us in a sort of illusion. And that is not some system or somewhere in the cosmos or something like that. That is mind. The Maya is mind. And why I'm mentioning this? You see, the habit of mind is labeling things. As soon as you label something, you lose touch with that thing and it becomes just like an explanation in your head. If you were able, even for 1 minute, to just look at everything without trying to explain them and label them, you will experience the whole life and your experience of life in a very, very different way. You become much more joyful and energetic and wise. So somebody asked a saint, how do I see God? And he said, close your eyes. Now open your eyes. The first thing that you see is God. Some people say he meant that everything is God. But I think the deeper meaning of that statement is when you open your eyes, before your mind can kick in, it might take a flash of second for your mind to kick in and say, okay, I'm closing my eyes, I'm opening out now. Okay, now this is camera. Before your mind kicks in, if you become very attentive, for a flash of second, there is a spark of pure consciousness, pure awareness, where the cognition and that recognition of the mind is not kicking in. Mind has different parts. Buddha, for example, has explained the mind in a way that no system has ever explained it, and yoga also has explained it. In the yogic system, for example, they explain the parts of mind in 16 parts. And a couple of these parts, which is also very known in modern psychology, is cognition and recognition. So cognition is for the first time you see something, a new car that you never have seen it, and then it goes to your memory. Next time you see the car and you say, oh, this is the BMW that I saw, you recognize it. But this cognition and recognition is happening in the mind. But the spirituality, remember, it's beyond the mind. That's why when you think you are religious and you think you're so sure that I'm seeking God and all those things, and everything that you do is just within the realm of the mind, and you're just thinking, and you think if you read 1000 scriptures and all those things and you have a lot of knowledge, still it doesn't matter. It's not different from reading some, newspaper in a way, because still you're just thinking. Because the reality, the being, the life, the experience of God, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, if you don't like the word God, that is not in the thought. Because thought is just illusion. It's a labeling system. Because we just, as I said, you open your eyes and then within a second, your mind says, oh, this is that thing, So let's wrap up with this nice story. Actually, we already mentioned it somewhere else also. There was a spiritual seeker who had a very lovely guru, and he experiences God in his meditation. He experiences like a micro enlightenment, for the lack of better word. And then he keeps meditating for days after that, weeks after that, and he cannot revive the same experience or get back there. Listen to this very carefully if you're a spiritual seeker. This can change your life. So he keeps pushing and trying, and still he cannot get back there to that state of realization, experience of God. So he goes to his guru and tells him about this and says, Guruji, this happened and I want to experience God again. The guru looks at him and says, don't look for God there anymore. Do you know why he says that? Because when you experience something, as I said, about the cognition and recognition, and then you are trying to go back there, you are not seeking God. You are just reviving that memory in your head and trying to go there. You're not connecting to God, because God is not in your memory. It's not in your recognition. It's not in your thoughts. Mind should be stopped or transcended for you to experience that transcendental spiritual experience. It cannot happen through the mind. So the mind becomes the greatest obstacle, because you had that experience and you try to get back there. You're just thinking and thinking and trying to go back to your memory. You're just playing in your brain. But as I said, when you open your eyes for a flash of second before your brain kicks in and recognizes things and labels things, that flash of second before the recognition and labeling happens, that's the reality. That is the portal to consciousness and God and enlightenment. And this is the key teaching of Buddha also. The mindfulness doesn't mean anything but this. To be in the present moment doesn't mean anything but this. To stop the mind also means this. So the key to spirituality and the only way to experience God or truth is this. All the other ways are just pre-steps for this step. So if you chant a mantra, The key, for example, in mantra yoga, the science of mantra is also this. They say, okay, there's this divine sound, and it's a very powerful system, obviously, in the yogic system. But ultimately, this sound should take you to this state of soundless, which is the same thing. The lack of mental activity and identity and transcendence. So you might do all types of spiritual practices, but those are lower levels of spiritual practices. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that you should put those away and just try to get to that state directly, because majority of people cannot get there, and this is a very big misunderstanding in some of the modern new age systems, as well as some of the misrepresented older systems. For example, even Vedanta, they just keep talking about like truth and just get there, directly go there. But if you go to many of the ancient systems which have explained this pursuit of truth in a very elaborate way, like for example, there's a powerful, very, very elaborate system of explaining cosmos and theology and enlightenment and spiritual progress called Kashmir Shaivism, also known as Trika. They also say that there are multiple ways to achieve that highest consciousness, and only a very small number of people can directly experience it. Other people need to purify themselves, to quiet their mind, to, become more stable, and all those things, and then you can get there. And just to add this also, the system of yoga comes from the philosophy of Sankhya in the Hindu systems, and Sankhya basically provides a map and steps for this as well. So you can gradually go up this ladder of consciousness. That's why yoga is very powerful and popular, not the gymnastics. I'm talking about the spiritual system of yoga. So just wrap up, the highest experience happens through silence, through selflessness, through the present moment. The present moment is the doorway to truth, to God, to highest reality. And you can start practicing this by yourself also. You don't necessarily need to go to a meditation course or anything to start it. If you just develop a practice of being more mindful, which means just seeing things without trying to explain and label them. For example, if you went for a walk, and maybe in the beginning it's not going to work, but if you just practice it, just go for a walk and then just pay attention to the birds and trees and the way that your body is walking and the breathing that's happening in your body automatically. And the key is to come out of your head and come into this moment, the experience of now, the experience of your feelings, the movement of your body, and all those things. And as you practice this more and more, you become more free and you become more joyful, because you're coming out of that mental cycle of thoughts and the past, which is all, regrets and things like that, and then future and worry and concerns and all those things. We need to come out of our creation and go to the God's creation. God's creation is that state which I've been talking about, which is beyond the mind. But what's our problem is that almost 24/7, we are living in a world created by our thoughts. This is the meaning of Maya and Matrix and all those things. This is the cosmic illusion and all those things. You create your suffering and your own limitations and your own jail by being trapped in your thoughts and beliefs and all those things. And yes, it's not that easy to get out of it, but if you work on it, one day it will happen, and you'll see that it's happening little by little, and then at some point you can get to a place which is freedom and the real power and realization is there. Everything else in life is temporary. It's just a game. There is nothing at the end of this life. You can do whatever you want. At the end, nothing is gonna go with you. All of this body that you have and all of your experiences that you have in your life, just to awaken you to this truth. And if you do it consciously, if you work on it, it can happen even in this lifetime. If you don't do it according to all of the spiritual traditions, it might take millions of years. If you don't do it, you will keep suffering and doing things again and again, and endless pursuit of satisfaction and happiness and dissatisfaction and all those things. And majority of people you see towards the old age and end of their life, they realize some of this. And more crazy than that is, I have read about this, that the people who are dying, you might think that they're fearful or anything like that, but most of them, if you look at their eyes, you look at their face, at the moment of their death, there is a surprise. There is a kind of like a shock in their face. At the moment of your death, when a specific energetic and chemical things happen in the brain, and for a short time, your perception, your higher consciousness gets activated when the soul is transitioning to the next life, let's say. And at that moment, you will experience the truth, the reality, which we've been talking about, which is the beyond mind, maybe for a moment. And then you say, oh my God, that's the truth. I've been living in an illusion my whole life. It's been all a dream. So the spiritual process is to consciously question and find what is the purpose and what is your real reason for being here and the purpose of this birth. Thank you for listening, and may all beings be free from the illusory self-created world within the mind.